Welcome to the Meta. This is a report by me, with me, where I'm looking at the GAC meta once or twice per season. This is the very first episode. We'll see how it goes. I would love any comments you may have on how it can be improved or more interesting for you. But mostly this is what I really find interesting. I talk about this all the time with people in Discord or, well, primarily Discord, rarely in game. I think it's a fascinating part of the game. It's the part that I enjoy the most, GAC obviously, and the meta itself is what's changing, what's popular, what's getting more or less used, what's growing, what's shrinking, etc. So who am I? I'm a longtime player of the game since about a month or two after launch. I have about 9 million in some GP, so I'm definitely up in there in the higher brackets in terms of roster size. I do pretty well. I did pretty well in GAC in the past season. In the new format, it's hard to tell. I mean, I went 6-0 in the first six matches, but there's no definition of skill there. So we'll see as the season progresses, and probably next season you'll start to see people, their skill rating represent their actual skill. Anyway, important for this actual show, I watch an enormous amount of GAC fights. There's about, well, mostly for the GAC counter tool, where you can find video content of different fights, but also because I want to get better. That's how it started before any of this came about, the Grand Arena Science page, is I just wanted to learn how to do more fights and learn how other people did them. And so all the different content creators have been extraordinarily helpful in making me a better player by watching what they do correctly or do incorrectly and learning from that. Anyway, I watch a lot. Rarely do I watch the whole entire fight. Most fights I know what's going to happen when I see the teams and the characters. So it's not like I actually watch all of these, the minutes per each one. But if you look, it works out to about theoretically 400 different fights a day on average over a season. It's a lot. And this doesn't even count Twitch. This is just on YouTube. Twitch, it's harder because I can't link directly to many of them, depending on whether you're a follower of the channel. Anyway, so that's who I am. Let's start looking at what the meta is doing right now. So the way that I personally quantify the meta in Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, it's sort of split in two pieces. One is the playstyles that are popular or growing in popularity or used frequently, and another is the teams. Both of these are influenced obviously by the community. The community decides the meta, and in a large part by the creators as well, and guilds. That's primarily guilds, and the content creators are primarily where players see examples of things that they can do and follow some aspect of that. So right now it is a total mess. By mess, I mean with the GAC format change, all of the new characters available, which are the new marquees, are viable at 3 stars. They totally change a number of different teams at 3 stars, which is amazing. Like, there's never been so much change at once before in GAC, and it is awesome. It's a fascinating puzzle. But I do want to talk a little bit about playstyles first, and how at least I quantify the playstyles. And I'm specifically aiming at sort of like the 4-5 million GP and above playstyles, because at a lower GP level, it's hard to have characters that play the same. By that I mean a Gear 12 character versus Gear 11 is totally imbalanced. A Gear 12 versus a Relic is totally imbalanced. Whereas once you're sort of into that Relic range, yes, characters become more powerful once you get them Relic 1 versus Relic 7, but they play effectively the same. And in many cases, maybe not most, but in a large amount of cases, whether a character is Relic 3 or Relic 5 or Relic 7 or 9, almost all of the fights will play out relatively the same. There's obviously edge cases, but as a general statement, once the characters are relicked, they play the same. So when I look at playstyles, I aim mostly at players that are using relic characters, because there's so many other variations when you get lower and you have one relic character and 4 G11s or something like that. It's hard to develop a meta with so many variations there. So the first one here, the high offense mech banners. This is basically the top of the leaderboards in the past GAC format, where you scored the most points. That's all the leaderboards were, who could score the most points and win, obviously. This is, in my opinion, it's difficult to perfect, but extremely effective, because you worry a lot less about your opponent. You just always have an offense that can kill 99% of any possible defense. So as long as you beat the teams for the max possible points, it's very difficult for most players to play against that. The efficiency players, effectively, is what you're talking about here. There's not that many of these players in the current format, because there's so many new characters, and there's not really a focus on efficiency. And there's a couple more reasons that I'll talk about in the last playstyle that I see frequently. So then there's this middle one here, the roster bully. And this is mostly characters, when you're up against another player and one of the two players has like 1 or 2 more GLs, usually 2 more GLs. 1 GL you can usually overcome. And effectively they place all of their strong characters on defense and do some small minimum attacks. And this will beat a lot of players just because they cannot beat through either of your walls. The GL and prey strategy, whatever you want to call it. So it's great. You spend hardly any time. You don't have to do hardly any thinking, and it will get you a decent crystal income, basically, with the new GAC format. This is also it serves as like a soft cap in terms of progression for lower roster size players. Let's say you have 2 GLs and you're up against somebody with 5 GLs. If you have the marquees, you might actually be able to do it, but in general, it's a very hard barrier to overcome. If they place all their GLs on defense, you have to keep your GLs to beat theirs, so the teams you have left, they can probably beat with some of their teams. So it's an unfortunate fact for progression in terms of aggressive players who have lower roster size. They won't be able to get past these roster bullies, but it's a good strategy for those people with bigger rosters. And then something that's becoming more and more popular now, partially because of the TW changes becoming an emphasis for many guilds, or a larger emphasis for many guilds. And some of the features available in different applications, such as hot utils primarily, which is what most guilds use, where you can share mod loadouts, and they're working on some team stuff as well. But essentially, you will have many people in the same guild that are using almost identical teams and mod loadouts, because that's what their guild uses for TW. So the upside of this is that usually they're good. The downside of this is that they're not great, because TW focuses just on winning a fight, not on banners. So it's easy to get 60 points with this sort of setup and teams, but not 65 points. So they're easy players to beat if you know how to, if you're more of an efficiency player, I guess. But it's hard to beat them at their own game if you don't have those same tools. So, all of that said, let's actually dig into the teams a little bit and start looking at how, besides my personal opinions of the teams or what I see in all of the different fights, let's look at. Actually, let me back up a little bit. Let me show you an example of a roster, an efficiency type player. So this is my GAC history, and this is looking at. I think this guy was the best one. This is looking at the week 2. So this is actually pretty. This is, I think, the closest opponent I had. None of them were really roster equivalent. This one guy was pretty close, but it's not really a fair matchup. I mean, they all have 6 GLs and stuff like that, but in terms of mods and other characters. So I'll show you what he did against my defense, and my defense is the high offense Max Banner's defense. It's not very, it's less accepting of mistakes, but if you don't make any mistakes, I think it's one of the best offenses. Anyway, you can see, so he used Troopers against my DR team. That's great. There goes the Troopers team. That's more what the team is for rather than causing banner loss. CLS versus Gas, that's six banners down. A GL, okay, fine. Another GL versus Bounty Hunters, great. His Bad Batch team is now used, which is what I was looking for also. The Jawas team here is a terrible choice, and I won't be using that again. Starkiller with no Omicrons is not a very good character on defense. On offense, he's good with Omicrons. He used a GL against Dash for 64 points. Here against the Night Sisters, he lost 3 points. Against the Ewoks, lost 1 point. 1 point versus the JTR team. And like 5 points versus each of these non-great teams. And you can see that I still beat him by like 20 points. I'll show you my attack. I have all of my GLs and Max Banner teams. So 64, 68, 62, 65, 65, 65. I think you get the idea. I'm not worried about what he does against my defense because it's extremely challenging. Even if he saved all of his GLs, he'd have to beat me at my own game effectively. And there's not many people who play this playstyle. So I think if you want to take control of your winning and not worry about other people making mistakes and improve your own skills, it's better to go with this high offense Max Banner playstyle. Anyway, it's personal preference. That's just what I like. And it is something you see less and less now in this format. I think it'll become more popular as time goes on, but anyway. So, talking about what the teams are and how to evaluate them. Notice in this list I have no GLs listed. The GL meta really didn't change. In some ways, GLs are relatively stale now. Almost everybody knows the counters to the existing GL comps. The ones that are a little bit tricky are like Ray, Cat, L3, Vandor, something like that. But again, JMK and Cat can beat that. So can other teams, but that's like just an easy one. So none of the teams I have listed here are GLs because most of the GL counters are well known and practiced frequently, especially in TW. And there's not that many well-known non-GL counters right now, off meta you could call them, primarily to like SLK. But there's ones that exist for all of, especially with the new marquees, there's off meta counters for all of the GLs. And this is a big part of what's going to be changing in the future meta. Mon Mothma with Kyle Katarn can take out a bunch of GLs. Starkiller can take, I don't know all the GLs, but most of them in GAC. EP with Mara Jade can take out, for sure, Jedi Knight Luke. And I've seen sometimes also once or twice against Rey. Anyway, there's a bunch of different off-meta counters that will become more popular as people unlock the marquees and gain access to them. But in these teams, I'm looking primarily at offense and defensive teams and how they're used. And I'll show you how I actually analyze this besides just seeing it. So I go to GAC or swgh.gg, which is amazing. Great tool, great team there. And let's take a look at Mon Mothma. We were just talking about this. So this is offensive. This is not the defensive side. This is the offensive side. Actually, let's look at Darth Treya. I know the username Darth Treya here because this is an example of one of the new marquees, Darth Talon. making a huge difference in Darth Freya's effectiveness. So, but let's use Mon Mothma, right? We can see how it works against Kyle Katarn. So, let's go down. Where's Kyle Katarn? Well, I'll just enter it in here because I know his name. So, not GLs, and I'll turn off the percentile. So now Darth Freya against Mon Mothma with Kyle Katarn. This is sort by scene, so the amount of times the fight's been seen. Doesn't have a very good win rate. As soon as Darth Talon is in there, it goes up to 80%. Without Darth Talon, 60, 40. So this is a great example how, and with Darth Talon and a good fifth, like for instance Sith Marauder or Sith Trooper, Red Trooper. If you have Sith Marauder or Sith Trooper in this Darth Freya comp, will beat 100% of the time all of the Mon Mothma teams. If you take out Kyle Katarn, well, Kyle Katarn's in all the popular ones. Take out Darth Talon, sort by scene. Darth Freya does great, but as soon as you add in Kyle Katarn there, Darth Freya does not do well. Like, you never really want to use a team like this in GAC unless you have Darth Talon. And keep in mind, this is not just relict Darth Talons. These are Darth Talons that the vast majority are 3-star or 4-star, and maybe gear 11, gear 10, something like that. So this is what I look through exhaustively, especially when I'm looking for a counter to a team. So let's go take a look at that. I actually have it open here. So let's try and evaluate the difference that a character makes. Let's look at Kyle Katarn, for instance. So we'll go to a season, we'll go to Mon Mothma here, and we'll add Kyle Katarn. And let's see what sort of, we'll uncheck this, turn off GLs, and, well, actually, I'll take out Kyle. So you'll see the strongest teams here with Mon Mothma, with Kyle Katarn in them. Troopers, CLS, Gas, Jawas even do pretty decently. GD does great. Okay, let's keep Kyle Katarn back in here. Troopers, Jawas, Geos, not Geos, sorry. Jawas, Troopers, Gas, and CLS. That's really it. Oh, well, Rex with Barris. It's a good one. EP, again with Mara Jade. If there's no Mara Jade in here, let's look at this for instance. If there's no Mara Jade, 84%, goes up 5% with Mara Jade. So it definitely makes a significant difference here. Depending on the other characters, it also helps she also helps quite a bit too. So this is what I'm talking about when I'm evaluating what teams work and don't work, because you can look here, look back at, well, there's no Kyle Katarn, but if you look back at the Mon Mothma teams that are used 2 seasons ago, the last 5v5 season, no Gas, a few CLS, but Gas was one of the most popular counters here. Right there, the second most popular counter. So think of how that changes the strategy when you're setting your teams. If you are now pulling Gas or CLS a good portion of the time versus not, that means Gas is not on defense, or Gas is not going to be used against your DR team potentially. So as I go through the different teams here, this is the sort of data that I looked at to arrive at that analysis, in addition to just seeing hundreds and hundreds of fights and seeing what different people are using in different GP ranges. So on offense, these are some of the most, it's a combination of popular, it's according to the stats, and most effective. Because even if a team is used, like here, this team is a good example. 241 times, well, 24 of those times it failed. A 90, same like with all the trooper counters almost. A 90% success rate is good. Like if you don't have another option, it's great. But much better to be like a 95 ish, something like that, depending on your opponent's team, of course. So that's how I'm looking at these top offensive teams. So Mon Mothma with Kyle Katarn is awesome. Takes out a number of GLs and very easy to 60 or 65 point most anything. CLS, a good offensive team for sure, but oftentimes you overkill. You're just killing because you're your first attack. Nothing wrong with that, but I think it's a little bit better on defense. It's still very popular on offense. Bad Batch probably has the greatest amount of change for teams compared to last season because he kills the Qui-Gon Jinn team very effectively, and with often now CLS and gas going on offense, depending again on your roster and whether you go heavy offense, heavy defense. Bad Batch is a very, very flexible team that can kill a bunch of stuff. Qui-Gon Jinn, obviously with the Omicron, everybody knows about him effectively, but I think he's going to become more of an offensive team, or you put him on defense when your opponent doesn't have Bad Batch, for instance, or you're trying to pull Bad Batch with, like if you put General Grievous in the front row and Qui-Gon Jinn behind in the back row, then maybe that's a better chance of getting good use out of his Omicron. But on offense, he can kill GLs also. Jedi Knight Luke, an amazing max point team if you have a fast Jedi to go first, but this is more for higher roster sizes because Jedi Knight Luke is often with JKL or excuse me, with JKR, Jedi Knight Revan, or Jedi Master Luke. So it's hard to say. And he's modded fast these days because he can also be used with JKR to kill SLKR. Bounty Hunters are amazing now with the Zam Omicron. There's a lot of options to make two teams. Troopers haven't changed in any power level, and in some ways they're a little stronger because they do, 90%, but they do take out the Mon Mothma teams and most of the new marquees as long as you go first. They take out Maul, they take out Starkiller. They're an amazing offensive team. Maul is pretty good on offense too with Bo-Katan. Watt makes him a lot better, but again, you can do a lot of stuff without Watt. Beskar Mando, a very, very strong character on offense. He also does a pretty good job taking out Maul without Watt, and General Grievous, which is his main target. So let's take a look here at who to attack, actually. A lot of people have a poor opinion of the Beskar Mandalorian because some streamers like to make fun of him, but definitely not true. So let's see scene. Most people are checking out Grievous. Night Sisters, obviously, 100%. Maul team, 100%. Not seen a lot, but the success ratio is very high. Good against CLS, but usually you want to put in L3 along with Dengar. What a great CLS counter for those people who play CLS on defense. Newt counter. Most of the lesser powered teams can do, they'll do pretty well against. So besides that, then you have the flex characters. Like Gideon is an extraordinarily powerful flex character. Probably the character, probably the best in the game. Starkiller without the Omicrons is not very good. With the Omicrons, quite good, although almost purely on offense. On defense, it's just too easy to counter if you go fast. Kylo Ren, Unmasked and Kylo Ren are very flexible in a number of places. Mostly for taking out trash teams, but if you throw in Hux, depending on if you're keeping all of your first order on offense or not, they can take out a bunch of teams because they stop turn meter. Hux is unique, stops turn meter. Geos this is a team that is going up in popularity. Let's take a look at this also. Because at higher relic levels, you can do a lot. So they're taking out primarily the Bad Batch, the Phasma teams, trash teams. Newt, they're excellent against Newt. The Finn, some of the Finn setups they're good against. The crappy Mon Mothma setups they're good against. They're probably one of the best GL cleanup teams. Let's sort by win. Not usually a good representation. But you can use them against GLs flat out if they're high relict. You don't see this in a lot right now in GAC. Here's one against Dooku. But you will start seeing it a little bit more as there's no real need to sort of like lower your or keep your GP low for bloat that's gone. Padme is an amazing offensive team, but not very good banners, and she sort of suffers that her team now is sort of split between Jedi Master Kenobi and Qui-Gon Jinn. Yeah, she's a great team, but oftentimes is not even used. Sometimes she's thrown in on the JMK teams on defense. Very powerful, more difficult to take out with JML because of the protection up she gives when the attackers assist. Defensive teams. So there's two styles of defense, and it fits into the playstyles I was talking about before. One of them is just put a really strong team that you need a specific counter to beat. The other one is focusing on going first and stripping banners, which is what I was showing you on my defense earlier. And as we're talking about that, I'll show that later. So I have mostly the GLs are really the only teams that you need a specific team to beat. But the non-GL teams that strip banners, I've primarily focused on in my listing here. So a Django lead with Zam Omicron in there is awesome. You don't need Bosk or Grief or anything like that. They're going to go first, and you throw in some AoE attackers in there. You'll strip some banners. Traya is great on defense, but the Traya team is one of the ones that have gotten dramatically more powerful on offense because of the teams that she can beat now. The Mon Mothma Kal Katar teams, the Dash Rendar teams, the Omicron Dash Rendar teams. She's awesome against those. So depending on what your opponent has and what you're planning to play, she's great banner stripping defensive team, and not many people use her. Or save her for offense with Darth Talon to make the expensive Omicron teams easy to beat. Dash is great on defense. He has some hard counters, but if people don't have those hard counters available or they use them up in the front wall, he can be very challenging to take out. Beskar Mando is the same. With hard counters, you can kill this team quite easily. Usually JKR is the most common, JKR and Bounty Hunters. But if you put good characters on the team, Nest and L3 are probably the best. He can definitely do some good work on defense. Maul is another popular team on defense. With Watt is far more strong, can hold up better, but Watt's very expensive to put on defense, especially with Maul. So usually it's just a way to force out troopers or Jedi Knight Revan. There's a lot of anti-trooper, anti-Jedi Knight Revan teams. Grievous is good on defense, although usually it's the Grievous droids, Suicide Droids team, to go first and strip banners. CLS is awesome because it's extremely hard to beat for max banners because of Han shooting first. So great on defense to strip banners. You can still beat him, obviously, and like using JKL is a popular way to do it, a non-GL version. And BAM is actually great to beat CLS for high banners, but it's not as popular. People don't know it as much. Gas is awesome on defense. One of the best defensive teams. Good on offense too, but very, very difficult to beat for max banners on defense. You saw the CLS teams that are most common. They don't do very well. Usually people use a GL like Sith Eternal Emperor or Bounty Hunters with Gideon. Those are the best for banners. Mon Mothma Kal Katarn, like we just talked about, excellent defensive team. You need a strong counter versus it. Night Sisters are good for either pulling out like troopers or something like that, or for stripping a few banners if Talon gets a turn and your offensive team doesn't have a lot of regeneration. JTR with the Vets or the Droids, both good banner stripping teams. GG, like I mentioned. Darth Revan, if you have a really fast Darth Revan, he can strip some banners, but most people know how to beat him. So Darth Revan is mostly a team to draw a specific counter. Again, depending on your roster size. EP with Mara Jade. It should be EP MJ, but anyway, MJ, I sort of like it. Very strong defensive team, especially if you have in Darth Revenant or Darth Vader in there. Darth Vader Short Trooper, maybe Thrawn or Gideon or something like that. You can certainly beat it, but if it gets running, it's not going to stop. Like, it's extremely, extremely good. JKL is good on defense, however, hard countered also. But again, if that player doesn't have the hard counters available. Jawas are good on defense, except as you saw earlier against KRU and Kylo Ren. Sometimes just the OG Kylo Ren can beat a full relic squad of Jawas pretty easily. Newt is good, flexible, you can add a lot of characters to him, but Geos is sort of a hard counter to most of the new teams. And neither are often used that much on defense. Maybe Newt, but that's, again, it's at lower roster sizes. He's great if the opponent doesn't have a solid counter to him. Qui-Gon Jinn, the very popular team on defense these days, even with the ease that BB has of beating it, with 5 members mainly, so that Wrecker will be enraged or whatever it is. He'll be able to use his abilities and taunt in the first turn. Still a good team on defense, just one of the most well-known set of counters to it. Okay, a lot of talking. We're half an hour into the video and almost done here. While I talk about the meta in the future, I'm going to show a video in the background of Starkiller beating Rey. Starkiller is the future on GAC offense. He's essentially another GL. He can beat Rey, he can beat Jedi Master Luke, he can beat Kylo Ren, he can beat Lord Vader. I haven't seen him beat Sith Eternal Emperor, although I think that would be easier almost than the other ones. And I haven't seen him beat Jedi Master Kenobi. But this is just, hardly anybody has him. Hardly anybody has all 3 of his Omicrons. And even fewer people are posting videos of him. So enjoy while I talk about the future. So the meta of the future is all these, the 4 new marquee characters, Mara Jade, Talon, Darth Talon, Kyle Katarn, and Dash Rendar. All of them have sort of their home team, but they can also all go into other teams and make them significantly more effective against a certain counter or set of counters. And as more people unlock these marquee characters, which means more people will also be getting Starkiller, the GAC meta is going to be shifting dramatically. We're also getting more Omicrons in the future. I don't know exactly how often, but certainly more, and I think many of the new characters will also have Omicrons. So this is, I think, where the character-wise, where the meta is going in the future. And as a sort of a side result of that, all of the available teams, or all the teams that are used, are effectively going to get stronger. Because, for instance, if everybody's using Darth Treo with Darth Talon, well, then you have what normally you'd use Sith Assassin or Sith Empire Trooper or something like that as a 5th or 4th in that team, and those characters are no longer needed. Sith Assassin may not be a good choice. I don't think Sith Assassin is going to be used in any other places. However, if you think of it as in when you add a character to a team, you take away other characters that were there. It's a filter down effect where all the different teams that are available will be a little bit stronger. And once, for instance, many people have the Dash Omicron team, well, that's definitely like in a top non-GL top 5 team. So it'll probably be, it'll replace the JTR teams, for instance, or Geos perhaps, or something like that. Some of the lower end teams. So in general, people are going to be upping their game in GAC to a level that has never been seen all at once before, which is awesome. There's going to be so many different weird, strange counters, like players like good old Maurice or End All Be All, or Bitcoin, or some of the content creators many of you guys enjoy seeing. We'll be using some very, very strange teams which is awesome to watch and awesome to learn from. And playstyles, I think, will be changing. The last comment I want to make here about what's coming up in the future of the meta is playstyles. Playstyles are going to be changing a lot as people figure out what they need to do to stay in the league and division they want for the crystal income they want. So I think many people don't really care about the competitive nature of GAC and really want to do, look at this first of all, check out this. Oh, that's awesome. Fatal has an R9 star killer, by the way, so these results are not typical. Anyway, so playstyles will be changing as people sort of split into the competitive section and the ones that are just doing the minimum GAC to keep their crystal income where they want. So for players that are climbing, like the vast majority of players, frankly, and want to get into Kyber 1 or above, that'll be very possible if, or as these new off-meta counters continue to become developed, or well-known, or shared, because all of the GLs have non-GL counters now that are somewhat reliable. It very much depends on what other characters are with the GLs. And here's the Omicrons for less defense when the enemies are debuffed are awesome for Starkiller. Sorry, I'm distracted by the Starkiller fight too. So it's definitely going to be an interesting future in GAC as the playstyles develop. More and more teams are discovered and different counters are discovered. It really feels like an even more extreme version before the road ahead changes of a few months ago were done, where they changed primarily defense and some of the characters. But these new marquees are, in many cases, much more effective versions than just using gas, for instance, or Dark Trooper or something like that. So I think it's a very exciting meta coming up in the future for GAC. I hope you found this interesting, informative. I would love to get your feedback on what you think could be changed or done differently to make it more effective or more interesting to you. This is the first episode. There's definitely more to come. So thank you for sticking around for half an hour, almost 40 minutes. I hope you found something interesting and educational for you. And cheers. Good luck in GAC.